Um, so welcome. 3 week session. Book of Joshua. What I thought we would do, based on some comments that we had several months ago already from the Torah study people on Saturday morning, is and then also we had a kind of abbreviated series on the book of Proverbs, but the
Hmm.
feeling was that that people wanted to have a context for for more of the narrative historical books, and start to go through them in a line by line, basically story by story, episode by episode, and where we have some comments and questions, we'll try to deal with them. So what I did was structured out kind of a probably about a 10-minute introduction to the book of Joshua, and then kind of arbitrarily said the targets would be to get through chapters 1 through 9 today, then 10 through 19 next week, and then 20 through 24 on the third week. It's very ambitious, and if we
Really?
find that we'd rather spend more time with an individual line story episode, like I mentioned, that's fine. That there's no obligation here, one way or the other. So uh, it's certainly appropriate, as we did with Proverbs with Mishle. It is appropriate to begin with the blessing of studying Torah, because we're talking of Torah in its larger sense. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
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 So we thank God, and we thank the miracle of Zoom for allowing us to busy ourselves with Torah, with
Yeah.
Torah. All right. So the book of Joshua assumes that the previous 40 years of wandering was not aimless, that it wasn't the children of Israel just wandering through the desert. But the book of Joshua assumes that the 40 years of wandering was a preparation, spiritual, mental, physical, military, with any of those objectives. And it was preparation to fulfill God's promise. And then what the book shows is that the promise wasn't totally fulfilled, but mostly under Joshua's leadership. Okay, so that's kind of like the mission statement, if you will, of why we have the book of Joshua where it is. It's not a sequel; it's a continuation. But you do need to have the background, and there are a few times that we'll actually look back into the background, that you do have to have the background of what was going on in the 40 previous years, if not the generations that preceded the wandering in the desert after the Exodus and after the revelation at Mount Sinai. All right. Structurally, we know that uh, Joshua has been placed as the first book of the second section of what Jewish tradition calls the Tanakh, the Hebrew scriptures, the Bible, Torah being the first, then Nevi'im, which is generically the prophets, divided into early prophets and later prophets, and then Ketubim are the holy writings. That's Proverbs, as we saw before, and Psalms, and the scrolls, the Megillot, like Esther and Ecclesiastes, things like that, as well as then Chronicles, that kind of completes The typical order, if you will, or the text of the Tanakh, what scholars refer to as the canon, with one N in the middle, Canon, the official canon. So Judges is the first book of the second part, known as the early prophets or the former prophets. That's Judges, Samuel, and Kings. Uh, they're historical rather than prophetic books. They're seen, however, as being divinely inspired. The author or authors were always considered in the rabbinic tradition as being divinely inspired, as opposed to the Torah that was written specifically by Moses, except for the last couple sentences, but that was written by Moses, dictated by God.
Right.
Not, but Joshua and the books that will follow are considered to be inspired by, not necessarily dictated. They underline the covenant upon which the national existence of Am Yisrael, of the people of Israel, or the Israelites, the Bnei Israel, the national existence, the covenant between them and God. And they're written from the perspective that the later prophets will continue to have. Okay? That God may be disappointed in us, and God does exact punishment from the people of Israel, but ultimately God will redeem the children of Israel. I mentioned that structurally, again, usually the book of Judges follows right after what's the Torah, or what's known as the Chumash. The Chumash, because it's the five from Chamesh, the five books of Moses, except there is one text of the early canon. It's called the Peshitta. It's a Syrian Greek text manuscript, and Judges, in between Deuteronomy and Judges comes the book of Job, because in that tradition there was a belief that Moses wrote the book of Job. May not make a lot of sense to us, but in the third century, that was of common era. That was their thinking, and so in that particular manuscript, like I say, it's called the Peshitta. It's the only one, but Job is placed there between Deuteronomy and Joshua.
Weird.
The we might identify 4 basic themes of the book of Joshua, and I'll summarize them. Again, I don't think anybody needs to be taking notes. It's not that kind of a discussion or class, but we can refer back to them. So, the 4 basic themes. One is that there is a promised land. There's land given to the people of Israel by God. Okay. However, it is conditional. It's conditional on that covenant. And if the Israelites broke the covenant, God does not have to maintain his part of the deal.
Gotcha.
So it's conditional. The promise is there, but it's conditional upon a faithful observance of the laws of the Torah as understood in those days, by the people. Second theme, that the children of Israel will need to fight for the land. It's not just a simple outright gift. Thank you very much. Goodbye. They need to fight for it. They need to battle hard, um, and demonstrate their faithfulness to God and God's word through the whole thing, but recognizing, again, this is thematic, recognizing that there are moments that God will step in and will make manifest God's desire for the Israelites to be able to inherit and possess the land. So there are miracles and there are signs and there are wonders, just as there were in the wilderness. Third theme, um, God's Israel's role is to recognize and respect and fear, and also then to I guess teach would be the best word, but to represent God's power, God's might, always to the other nations of the world. Con- Conquest of the land was not merely, and again, I think I used this word the other day in Torah study on Saturday. Conquest of the land was not merely colonization. There was a higher calling, a holy mission, so that the inheritance of the land, possession of the land, would further the opportunity of Israel displaying and representing God's might, existence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then the fourth theme, which also it is one of the ones, and we kind of alluded to it, of why Joshua is included with the section of the prophets, is that Israel will suffer the same fate as the Canaanites if they don't keep their part of the covenant. There's their acceptance of God has to be voluntary. It also has to be wholehearted and complete. And that there is, and we may today even see some examples, there's collective responsibility. So Steve at least is familiar with the phrase "Kol Yisrael Arivim Zel Hazeh," that all Israel's responsible one for the other. Is that if one of the individual Israelites sins, trespasses, does something wrong, the community has to respond. Okay, that otherwise the entire community will suffer a punishment from the acts of one. Now that may be when we see the story, it may be an allegorical story or it may have been a true story, but it allows for the teaching of that. It's almost like the phrase is there in the text that all of Israel is responsible one for the other, which means all of responsible. We also all suffer the same consequence if we have not made sure that everyone is doing what they should do. Yes, Marty, please.
Right. It isn't it a two-way street that the community is also responsible for the individual? And if the community doesn't teach the individual, let's say the individual strays, there are things put in place that the community is obligated to do.
Yes.
To try to get that person back in to follow the way, if you will.
To have the procedures by which someone who has strayed can always come back.
Right.
Yes. And I thought you meant doesn't it work the other way, meaning that can all the people receive the benefits?
Yeah.
I mean, if we're gonna receive the punishment, we can also receive the benefits. If there's one person, think of the story that back to Pinchas, back in the Torah, that Pinchas and all his descendants receive a brit shalom because of his acts, even though they were individual acts. So yeah.
Sure.
Okay, the Talmud has a very simple statement about Joshua, and that is Joshua is to Moses as the moon is to the sun. Now David is not is in here to make to make a comment. I don't know, but that's that the sun wouldn't have its importance without the moon tagging along, whatever. And on those days when the sun isn't available, we can certainly find hope and and whatever, if not light, by just seeking the moon at nighttime. So, all right. So I just want I've had that, I knew that quote and I wanted to share that. The commentary that I'm using primarily for my preparation of helping with this discussion is that from Herbert Friedman, who's a British-based uh, earlier mid 20th century rabbi and scholar, that Joshua, this is almost an exact quote. Joshua was a man of his words, modest and simple. He kept his promises. He was fair. He had no ego. Now, I'm not sure that we would all totally agree with that, but so that might be something that we can kind of keep in mind. Did we know that God and Moses chose Joshua? And the old joke is, of course, that Joshua is an orphan, right? Because he's the son of none, right? He's the son of none. So okay, so he's an
That's a
orphan.
joke.
It is a joke. It is a joke.
Bad
Right,
joke.
right. And the Catholic priests love it. So right.
Mm.
But but again, they cite him as an ideal, not the only, but they cite him as an ideal leader in his fairness and in his modesty, his willingness to accept responsibility,
Right.
to change, things like that. So okay. All right,
Courageous.
that's my background. That's my background. Yes, Steve, please.
Yeah, just wanted to ask a question. If and I have a personal interest, and I'm sure other people might have this interest as well, of biblical archaeology, and to what extent it supports the narrative. Right now, I'm reading a very interesting book, and I'm sure there are many books written on this subject about what is supported and what is not within the narrative. I just wanted to know if we'd be touching on that, or maybe you could touch on that in the future.
I wouldn't necessarily, but I am more than more than willing to welcome comments, questions, whatever, illustrations, whatever that that particular study can bring to us. That's great. That I'm not a screen sharer with that kind of thing, but remember that at this point, and again, we were just talking about it on Saturday morning. At this point, right when we begin, the children of Israel are in what are called the steppes of Moab, the low country underneath the mountaintops. That's kind of near the border of Jordan and Syria, east of the Jordan River or the Jordan Stream. For anybody who's ever seen it, it's not the mighty Mississippi by any means, but east of the Jordan River, and so a lot of whether the name places, or whether they're, when you get to the stories of Gilgal and Jericho, if there are insights that you're aware of from archaeology, please let us know.
Yeah. I don't know if the book is reversed, but here
No, it's fine.
It's fine.
That's right. That's
Bible
right.
on Earth.
Oh, you can make it out. Okay, it's the Bible Unearthed.
Yeah.
Is
the
that
book that
Shank?
I'm?
No, that's Finkelstein. Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, there are quite a number of them, but that's great. Please share.
And I remember, from about the time that my family came to Israel, in '68, my dad was very enthusiastic about biblical archaeology, and he was constantly schlepping us to to all these places that had excavations,
Right.
places like Hatzor
Right.
had excavations, and Yigal Yadin, who was a very respected archaeologist and
Amongst other things.
ex-military,
Right.
he
Mhm.
actually, believed that the the narrative in Joshua was pretty accurate, which later scholars disputed a bit,
Right.
certain aspects of it,
right.
but
In quite a number of them. Obviously, in all the trips that I've been to Israel, and with lots of different tour guides and the opportunities to study or to you get to a place, whether it's Chatzor, whether it's Megiddo, whether any of these places, and you look up the biblical text and you look at the story. We used to go to the Emek Ha'elah, with the which is the valley where David and Goliath had there,
Oh,
and
yes.
when
Wow.
we took tour groups with little kids, we would we would say, okay, you stand here and you stand here. Oh, look, there's the very stone that David used in his sling, right there. And we would act out the story and
Oh,
things like
how
that. So
cool.
I mean, that's the beauty of
Right.
traveling through Israel like that. My
Yeah.
experience at most of the literally, and I think some of you know this. We just talked about it at our big reunion thing in San Diego earlier this month. Was two other fellas and I, when we were doing our rabbinic school year in Jerusalem. So two other fellows and I, we were invited to do a Bob Hope type tour, entertaining the troops. Now they weren't really full soldiers; they were Nachal. Nachal was in those days. I'm not sure if it still exists in the same way, but Nachal was a division of the Israeli army that they could volunteer in, that would settle, that would develop and settle what became a kibbutz or a moshav, but in many cases they were strategic positions. And so there were a whole. This is within a second, Steve. All along the Jordan River Valley, from Beit Shan down to Jericho. So there were about 15 different Nachal. They were called bases at that point, but eventually they turned into either kibbutzim or moshavim. But they were all established as military positions. And so we spent 10 days visiting all of those Nachal army bases, and with the guitars and singing American folk songs and some things that I had written in Hebrew, and and whatever. But every single place that we visited, long story made short, every single place that we visited had its name from the book of Joshua.
Yeah. Oh,
Every single place.
yeah.
Okay, Steve, what did you have something more about Nachal or whatever?
I
Yeah.
did actually. I served in Nahal when I was in
Great.
the Israeli army, and just a little amendment to what you said. What you're describing are Nahal outposts,
Uh-huh.
which is one aspect of a person's Nahal. Nahal is totally military. In other words, I was military, but part of the time I was able to serve on a civilian kibbutz. And part of the time you could serve on one of these outposts, they were agricultural, but they were military bases. In other words,
Right.
the soldiers who were on these outposts, they would grow cucumbers or herd sheep or all that stuff, but they could be called out if there was an infiltration. They'd have an alert, and they'd be called out with their guns and all their equipment. And they were, trained infantry too. So that was one aspect of it. And then
No, it's not. It wasn't reserved.
and then
Chris. These were active young, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, right? Not the reserves, right?
yeah, it was regular service. Yeah. Josh from our congregation was also Nahal, and his service in the army, he was a paratrooper. My service in the army, I was a tank crewman. So,
Uh-huh.
different people did different things, and some people were regular infantry, and a friend of mine was a medic. So, a lot of different things. And also, I don't want to take up the time describing Nahal, but Nahal also has some sort of arrangement under its aegis of enabling yeshiva bochers who have a little bit more feeling that they should be serving to serve.
Yeah.
So there were Nahal who were religious guys, and
Yeah,
they were actually
that wasn't in 1970. It wasn't that way in 70. That there, that- at
it
least
must
the
have been
bases-
very shortly after
yeah,
because
at
when
least
I
the
was
bases- at least the bases that we went to,
oh
there
no,
were
no, you wouldn't have seen these guys as identified as such, but they were yeshiva bochers. There were a couple of them in my tank crew who they would spend the time that they weren't strictly military, they were in the yeshiva. But when they were in the military, they were fully military. So these guys were in my tank crew. They had to stop 3 times a day to daven, of course, and they didn't clean the tank on Shabbos. That I did alone. But
Well, that's interesting because we are going to encounter one story on whether or not the Israelites could be preparing for battle on Sabbath.
On Sabbath, yeah.
On the seventh day.
these guys said they couldn't.
Just
so
one
they
last
didn't.
one last personal piece then about this. What created great conflict, if you will, but we enjoyed it was so. Our closing song whenever we would perform, our closing song was a rendition of Psalm 128 that I had written, that includes the word Adonai, and I wrote it with our saying Adonai. Whereas, and here are the Israelis, these young Israelis, they've never, outside of a synagogue, they've never heard Adonai. It's always Hashem or Adoshem or something like that. And the gasps, and that would always lead into, we would sit over coffee or whatever after the show, and we would be talking about reform and progressive Judaism and and this and that. But every single time that we did, I mean, they would sing along to Puff the Magic Dragon, but when we got to Hine ki chen yivarach gaver yirei Adonai, they'd whoa. Anyway. Okay, so I'm going to follow Marty's pattern. Does everybody have a text?
Yep.
Does everybody have a book?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So somebody want to read? I've got some arbitrary breaking this up. And one more background thing. Why is it called the Jordan River? Why is it called the Yarden in Hebrew?
Guess that it comes from Yud Resh Dalet. Oh, this is going to be a joke, but
no, it's not a joke.
I don't know.
It's not
okay,
but
Yud Resh Dalet,
Yarad. It's not a joke.
It's descent.
It's because it's the descending river.
Oh, coming down.
It comes from the 3 tributaries up in the Golan Heights, and then descends into the Sea of Galilee, and then further descends down to the lowest point on earth, down to the Dead Sea. So it's the descending river. It may have had some kind of a river, some kind of a name earlier, but Yarden, or the descending river, stuck.
Oh, thank you. That was interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So someone want to read? Let's break out verses chapter 1. Verses 1 through 9. Marty, you never get the chance to read because you always.
Yeah, Marty, read.
Okay. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, The Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' attendant, my servant Moses is dead. Prepare to cross the Jordan, together with all this people, into the land that I am giving to the Israelites. Every spot on which your foot treads, I give to you, as I promised Moses. Your territory shall extend from the wilderness and the Lebanon to the great river, the river Euphrates, on the east, the whole Hittite country, and up to the Mediterranean Sea on the west. No one shall be able to resist you as long as you live. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not fail for you or forsake you. Be strong and resolute, for you shall apportion to this people the land that I swore to their fathers to assign to them. But you must be very strong and resolute to observe faithfully all the teaching that my servant Moses enjoined upon you. Do not deviate from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Let not this book of the teaching cease from your lips, but recite it day and night, so that you may observe faithfully all that is written in it. Only then will you prosper in your undertakings, and only then will you be successful. I charge you, be strong and resolute. Do not be terrified or dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go.
Okay.
Look at the teaching.
Couple things. The very beginning, I think probably in many of our translations, the Vayehi in Hebrew, Vayehi acharei mot Moshe, that and it came to pass, but it starts with now. So now there's okay, there's an expectation that something has happened, that they recognize that they're finished with their mourning. It's time to move on,
Oh, okay.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not just after the death of Moses. It's also, and the commentaries pick up on it. It's not just after the death of Moses. It's after the mourning for Moses. It's after the recognition that they're ready to take the next step in the journey. They're ready to accept Joshua as the leader, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the now becomes kind of very, very important there. And now it, we're moving to the next stage of Israel's existence, which will be marked, if Moses's leadership and I guess I'll use the same phrase, the stage of existence of the people, or as a people, was marked by the Exodus and the revelation at Sinai. Now the next stage, this stage, will be marked by actually crossing the Jordan
Okay.
and inheriting the land that God had promised. So again, all the things that have happened, and the assumption. I think most of us are familiar enough with certainly the book of Deuteronomy and the quotations that are in the prayer book from the book of Deuteronomy, that a lot of these phrases sound familiar, right? Okay. The Rashi also points out that phrase "chazak ve'amatz," how do they translate it here? This one, be strong and of good courage. Marty, I didn't whichever way, but it occurs more than once, and it will occur frequently in at least the first half of Joshua. Be strong and of good courage, not faint of heart, whatever. On the one hand, and Rashi says there are really two purposes to this. And it's not. You might think that it's only be strong and of good courage because you're going to be going into battle and because you're experiencing, real challenge to your peoplehood. Rashi said that's the one, but why is it repeated twice? The second one is that it's for having moral courage.
Oh,
They're going to be tests of morality. They're going to be tests of, like I said, with the phrase we were using before, of responsibility to each other and to the covenant. So that's why the phrase is occurred more than once. But some of those other phrases, let not in verse 8, let not the book or the words of this Torah depart from your mouth, kind of thing. Meditate on it day and night, observe all that is written, etc. Things like that. Okay, yeah, Steve, please.
Yeah, no, the expression you mentioned, the expression chazak ve'amatz, which has really been, that's infiltrated the modern usage, and
Yes.
day-to-day Israeli usage, and it's actually the motto for Shomer HaTzair, ironically, which is a socialist scouting movement in Israel, not particularly religious.
Right.
But their motto is that they took that from the Bible. Their motto is Chazak ve'amatz. So, it's something that you hear a lot. It's one of those, biblical phrases, of course. Bible, of course, is very big in Israel, and Ben Gurion, not a particularly religious person, was a Bible scholar, and so it really, these expressions really infiltrated daily usage.
Like you say, a politician's speech. They're all part of the nuance and even the slang, if you will. Marty, you had your hand up.
Yes, one of the things that crossed my mind, and I know David is a scholar of Shakespeare. In his book, in the play Hamlet, the soliloquy of Polonius and he's addressing his two sons. The phrase, "Do not deviate from it to the right or the left, that you may be successful." But that his entire soliloquy is sort of based on. I think it's based on this, because
that's another one that's in Deuteronomy.
Yes.
We haven't encountered it.
Yes,
but it's like
right.
Joshua is either intentionally or unintentionally mimicking some of Moses's words in his farewell address.
Right. There's a reason why he's doing that, is that if you're a leader, you're going to acknowledge previous leaders and their strengths, and this is one reason why Joshua would be considered a leader, quoting Moses. Yeah.
Right. I was rather struck with the phrase, the book of teaching, of the teaching. I thought that was a beautiful, instead of just saying, the Torah, but the book of the teaching.
Yeah. Well, we're actually just translating Torah in Hebrew.
No, I know, but that's beautiful. It really is. Book of the teaching.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, so
I know it's a translation, but
I mean, the original Hebrew, they're just using the word Torah. They're not saying book of teaching. And
no, I know, but I'm just saying that in this translation, it's a beautiful phrase. I like that.
Yeah, Definitely. Later on, and I use it frequently, um, with out of the Chazak ve'amatz, one of the Hasidic rabbis, I don't remember if it's Levi Yitzchak or one of them, does a teaching that, what's the best way to find or to describe, well, chazak is an adjective as opposed
Right.
to then a chozek would be the noun. But what's the best way to find the strength? Is amatz. You break amatz into three letters. That it's actually a mnemonic kind of thing for emet, which is truth, Masorah, which is tradition, and tzedakah, which is righteousness and whatever. That's the best way to find Jewish strength, if you will, with a devotion to truth, tradition, and righteousness. So that's always a cute. Whenever I hear Chazak ve'amatz, I think of that one too. Okay. Verses 10 and 11 are Joshua's orders to the officers.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Someone want to read 10 and 11?
Joshua thereupon gave orders to the officials of the people. Go through the camp and charge the people thus. Get provisions ready, for in 3 days' time you are to cross the Jordan in order to enter and possess the land that the Lord your God is giving you as a possession.
Okay. Any thought about 3 days? Why they have to wait 3 days?
What does Rashi say?
I have a feeling Rashi has something to say about
Well,
that. Yeah.
what some of them say is that 3 days was a particular measurement militarily for the success or failure of a particular mission. So, like we're gonna encounter in chapter 2, we're gonna encounter Joshua sending spies into Jericho. Okay,
Right.
and that's a 3-day experience. So it may have just been that 3 days where it takes 3 days to prepare, as opposed to when the Israelites, again earlier on, they had to purify themselves and whatever. That was much longer than a 3-day time. Yeah, Chris.
Yes, I remember where they walked around Jericho Wall. Was that also 3 days walk?
7 days. That was 7 days.
7 days. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
We'll get there.
to that.
Jericho's not till
Right.
chapter
No,
6.
we're just connected
You know,
between
right.
there. Okay.
Marty?
Could the 3 days also represent Chazak, Chazak, Chazak?
No,
The three-
Chazak, V'nit Chazek, maybe.
And
Well,
and to
okay.
think of each
Courage,
one.
courage,
Okay. That's as good as any other Rashi I've heard. That's fine. That's fine. And again, I plead absolute ignorance when it comes to military strategy and chain of command and things like that. Okay, but those are Joshua's off. And again, but he reminds them that that again, the thematically that we were saying that we're on a mission that God is sending us.
Right.
Okay. All right. Now we have to remember the story. We haven't gotten there on the Saturday morning, but some of you might remember. So now we look at verses 12 through 18, and well, we have to remind ourselves of what the story is. So back in Numbers, Moses is apportioning the the land. Once we do cross,
Right.
this is where the territory of Judah will be. This is where the territory of Dan will be. This is where the territory of Shimon will be, et cetera, et cetera. Ephraim, and no,
Dividing the
this is
land.
where all of them will be. Okay, and um, Reuben and Manasseh, right? And
Right.
why am I blanking on the third, on the half?
The half tribe of
And
Manasseh,
the
Reubenites,
half
and the
tribe of
Gadites.
Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh.
Mhm.
Right. Okay.
Okay, good
Say,
point.
and actually, this is specifically the area where the Saturday morning group is at geographically. Okay, is the those two tribes, Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. The other half is Ephraim. They say, we want to stay here. We like the Golan Heights.
Mhm.
Okay, but that's where Josh Migdal, that's where he wanted to live, right? Okay. We like this territory. We want to farm here, dairy cows, and this is where we want to be. Wait a minute, the rest of us are all going to battle to cross the Jordan River. Why should we let you stay here? Okay, so they reach an agreement that the men of military age from those tribes will participate in the conquest, but all the population will not. The women, the children, the elderly, they can stay up in Bashan, Golan, whatever. They can stay there, but as long as the military age men will come and fight, then they can return. So that was an agreement with Moses.
Okay.
Okay, so we need to have that background. So now we're 12 to 18. Reader,
Okay.
please.
Oh, I
Well,
can read.
Joshua, oh, okay.
Go ahead, Chris.
Joshua thereupon gave orders to the officials of the people. Go through the camp and charge the people, thus get provisions ready for the 3 days time. 3 days time. You are to cross the Jordan in order to enter and possess the land that the Lord your God is giving you as possession. Then Joshua said to the Reubenites and the Gadites and half a tribe of Manasseh, remember that Moses, the servant of the Lord, enjoined upon you when he said, the Lord your God is granted you a heaven. He has assigned this territory to you. Let your wives, children, and livestock remain in the land of that Moses assigned to you on this side of the Jordan.
That's the east
But,
side of the Jordan.
oh,
Okay.
sorry, on
No,
the
no, no.
side.
I'm just
No, it's
helping.
on the east. Yeah, on the side of
Right.
the Jordan. But every one of your fighting men shall go across, armed in the band of your kinsmen, and you shall assist them until the Lord has given you kinsmen a heaven. You shall such as you have, and they too have gained possession of the land that the Lord your God has assigned to them. Then you might return to the land on the east side of the Jordan, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, assigned to you as your possession, and you might possess it. You want me to read 16?
Yeah, read until
Yeah,
18.
okay.
Mhm.
They answered Joshua, we will do everything that you have commanded us, and we will go wherever you send us. Then we will obey just as we obey Moses. let but the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. And any man who flouts or commands and does not obey every word you give him shall be put to death. Only be strong and resolute.
Right. Okay. So we have the background, the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh. They remind Joshua that we had this agreement. Joshua said, "Yep, that's okay. You know, your young ones, your women, your cattle, they can all stay here, but the soldiers have to come with us." And the agreement is, okay, you know, Moses said it, you're agreeing, chazak ve'amatz, with it, you know, okay, we're with you. We're strong, we have good courage, and we're with you. Okay. The mighty ones can go into battle. The question is, aren't they leaving, you know, thinking of Amalek,
Yeah.
right? You know, aren't they leaving some of the you know, the innocent and
Children,
unguarded,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Okay, you know, does that make sense? Is that right? And again, the commentator said no, Joshua wouldn't have been that, you know, that irresponsible. So he handpicked some of the older men who were established military. They had military history, right? Okay, you know, he did a quick and that. Oh, incidentally, that's one of the things of the 3 days. Okay, is that that it took 3 days
now
to
that makes
identify that. I forgot about that. It took 3 days to identify, you
yeah,
know,
sure.
who would
Sort
stay
out everybody. Yeah.
to protect the others. You know, that
Yeah,
kind of
I
thing.
thought
They
that
were, but
the
you know,
time
whoever wrote this, and then the commentators or the, you know, afterwards, they realized some of those things. They asked the questions. It was
Yeah.
important. Yeah, please, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, no, my theory about 3 days is 3 days is the shortest period of time that has a beginning, an end, and a middle.
right.
True.
You can't get, yeah, if it's only 2 days, it's
There's
only got a
the
beginning.
first, the last, and then the
It's only
interim,
got a
right.
beginning and an end, but no middle. So that's nothing, you know. But you need a period of time that's got a middle too, so you can really get things done.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
That's a good one, Steve.
Okay. All right. Chapter 2,
Yeah.
and probably second only to the story of Jericho.
Mm,
Chapter 2 is probably the other most well-known story
right.
that
Yeah.
comes
Yeah.
from Joshua. Okay. All right. So who would, you know, I mean,
I can read.
go ahead.
Yes, Steve.
That's fine.
Okay. Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 men from Shittim as spies, saying, "Go, reconnoiter the region of Jericho." So they set out, and they came to the house of a certain prostitute named Rahab, and
Now,
lodged there.
incidentally, okay, yeah, incidentally, let's clarify this right away, okay? Because the most of the translations that we're going to see make Zonah a prostitute or a harlot or whatever. Okay,
Mhm.
that was not the case with the earlier commentators. Okay, because they said the Hebrew word zonah is related to the Hebrew word mazon, which is food, sustenance. She wasn't a prostitute. She was an innkeeper.
Uh-huh.
She had a restaurant, you know, with some rooms upstairs, you know, a pension kind of
Okay.
thing. It wasn't that she was it wasn't
It was a hostel.
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Well,
Okay. So
well, I would say to them,
we need
nice
to
try,
clarify.
you know. Yeah.
We need to clarify, again, those who really appreciate the story of how what military life was like, and those who saw it a little bit. Oh yeah, Marty, yeah, please.
This reminded me of the song "There Is a House in New Orleans."
Right. There's a house in
Gentlemen, gentlemen.
Jericho. Right. Okay. All right. Okay. So anyway, so here's Rahab, and whatever her profession was, it was an old profession. Any way you look at it, right? Okay.
Mhm. And the king of Jericho was told, "Some men have come here tonight, Israelites, to spy out the country." The king of Jericho thereupon sent orders to Rahab, "Produce the men who came to you and entered your house, for they have come to spy out the whole country." Okay, this is like a small neighborhood. News
Yeah.
spreads
Yeah,
fast.
right.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. The woman, however, had taken the two men and hidden them. "It is true," she said, "the men did come to me, but I didn't know where they were from." I'm sorry, here, bear with me. Sorry, let me turn that off. And at dark, when the gate was about to be closed, the men left, and I don't know where the men went. Quick, go after them, for you can overtake them. Okay. Now she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under some stalks of flax that she had lying on the roof. So the men pursued them in the direction of the Jordan down to the fords, and no sooner had the pursuers gone out than the gate was shut behind them. The spies had not yet gone to sleep when she came up to them on the roof. And then she said to the men, "I know that God has given the country to you, because dread of you has fallen upon us, and all the inhabitants of the land are quaking before you. For we have heard how God dried up the waters of the Sea of Reeds for you when you left Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the two Amorite kings across the Jordan, whom you doomed. When we heard about it, we lost heart, and no one had any more spirit left because of you. For the eternal your God is the only God in heaven above and on earth below."
Okay. Just stop for
Okay.
1 second. Okay. For a long time in the rabbinic tradition, that phrase, the second half of verse 11, is as well known and as a quote from Rahab as Ruth's quote to Naomi. And they go so far, some of them go so far as to say that's her moment of conversion.
Oh,
Okay. That in verse 11, when she says, the Lord your God
Right.
is God in the heaven above
Right.
and on earth beneath. That's her way of saying, your God shall be my God, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Okay. And they see that as an act of conversion, so that everything that follows about Rahav, and we'll see it, but everything that follows like that, the rabbinic tradition sees her as what we call a ger tzedek, as a righteous convert. Okay. Matter of fact, incidentally, there's even one commentator, I'm forgetting who. There's one commentator who says that Joshua winds up marrying her.
Yeah.
Because we don't hear too much about Mrs. Joshua anyway. Sorry, we'll pick up at 12, Steve. Sorry.
"Now, since I have shown loyalty to you, swear to me by God that you will in turn show loyalty to my family. Provide me with a reliable sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and save us from death." The man answered her, "Our lives are pledged for yours, even to death. If you do not disclose this mission of ours, we will show you true loyalty when God gives us the land." She let them down by a rope through the window, for her dwelling was at the outer side of the city wall, and she lived in the actual wall. She said to them, "Make for the hills so that the pursuers may not come upon you. Stay there in hiding 3 days until the pursuers return, then go your way."
Another
3
3
days.
day,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
set of block of time. Mhm.
Okay, but the men warned her, "We will be released from this oath that you have made us take, unless when we invade the country, you tie this length of crimson cord to the window through which you let us down. Bring your father, your mother, your brothers, and all your family together in your house. And if anyone ventures outside the doors of your house, their blood will be on their head, and we shall be clear. But if a hand is laid on anyone who remains in the house with you, their blood shall be on our heads. And if you disclose this mission of ours, we shall likewise be released from the oath that you made us take." She replied, "Let it be as you say." She sent them on their way, and they left, and she tied the crimson cord to the window. Tikvat Shani, and interesting. I was just looking at the Hebrew, what they were, what was it? It was a Shani in Hebrew is the word. And the cord is Tikva, which is like
Right.
Tikva, which is the hope. So I wouldn't have translated that as cord. I'd have to look that one up. But
Yeah, my translation here is a scarlet line, but whatever.
oh,
Yeah. But a
Well,
kav, you know, kav is a line. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, true. Yeah, so Tikva, I guess. Yeah. So it actually there is a okay. Well, we could
Sort of reminds me of something that happened in Egypt with blood over the floors.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
no, there's a
you
sort
know,
of a visible sign.
red,
Yeah.
right, and they
Mhm.
right. Mhm.
Okay. So they went straight to the hills and stayed there 3 days until the pursuers turned back. And so the pursuers, searching all along the road, did not find them. Then the two men came down. Okay. Then the two men came down from the hills and crossed over. They came to Joshua, son of Nun, and reported to him all that had happened to them. They said to Joshua, "God has delivered the whole land into our power. In fact, all the inhabitants of the land are quaking before us."
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So now they have all the information that they need because of those spies. And incidentally, Jewish tradition says that one of the spies was Caleb, who was Joshua's partner,
Right.
in the original, the 12 spies back in the other
Oh.
Torah story.
Right.
Okay, I forget who they say the other one was, but Caleb is considered to be one of the two because Joshua could trust him. Whatever. Okay. All right. And I mentioned about that Rahab is seen as converting
Right.
to Judaism at that point, and that there's even one strain of tradition that Joshua marries her, and that one of their later descendants is the prophet Jeremiah. Okay, I don't think that there's not a lot of of proof texting for that, but somebody throws that out somehow. Okay, so then in chapters 3 and 4, we actually get to cross the Jordan. Anybody? Gail, you want to read 3 and 4?
Oh, sure. 3 and 4. Okay. Early next morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim and marched to the Jordan. They did not cross immediately, but spent the night there. 3 days later, the officials went through the camp and charged the people as follows. When you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God being borne by the Levitical priests, you shall move forward, follow it, but keep the distance of some 2,000 cubits from it, never coming any closer to it, so that you may know by what route to march, since it is a road you have not traveled before. And
Okay,
Joshua,
just one second, just one
Okay.
second. So again, we've got the 3 days.
right,
That's obviously, that was a particular measure of time that was important and recognizable, acknowledged to them in those days. The 2,000 cubits, does that amount of space or whatever that length say anything to anybody? You have to be very, very knowledgeable, and you have to be very frum or observant or knowledgeable about the halacha to know what the 2,000 cubits is.
no. Have a clue.
First
Two
thing,
thousand cubits, which apparently, no, 2,000, yeah, 2,000 cubits is the distance that you're allowed to walk
Oh,
on
Oh,
Shabbat.
Shabbat,
Okay,
yeah, okay.
unless there's an eruv, unless if,
Mhm.
if there's the eruv that extends, what the borders of the walls of your house. So the eruv makes a much larger neighborhood. But if there's no eruv,
Eruv,
two
then
thousand
2,000,
cubits is the farthest length that you're allowed
Okay.
to walk before it
Okay.
becomes labor.
Mhm.
gotcha.
Okay, so that's why, again, and which came first. They may have just pulled it out of this, whatever. We don't really know, but it's the accepted amount. Okay, sorry.
So now, how far do you want me to read? To what?
Keep going. You're at 5. I may stop you here and there.
Oh, okay. Purify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will perform wonders in your midst. Then Joshua ordered the priests, take up the Ark of the Covenant and advance to the head of the people. And they took up the Ark of the Covenant and marched at the head of the people. The Lord said to Joshua, this day, for the first time, I will exalt you in the sight of all Israel, so that they shall know that I will be with you as I was with Moses. For your part, command the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant as follows. When you reach the edge of the waters of the Jordan, make a halt in the Jordan. And Joshua said to the Israelites, come closer and listen to the words of the Lord your God. By this, Joshua continued, you shall know that a living God is among you, and that he will dispossess for you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, I can't pronounce all these,
You're doing fine.
Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites. The Ark of
Those are
the
the seven.
Covenant.
Those are the seven nations of Canaan.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. The Ark of the Covenant of the Sovereign of all the earth is advancing before you into the Jordan. Now selects 12 men from the tribes of Israel, 1 man from each tribe. When the feet of the priests bearing the Ark of the Lord, the Sovereign of all the earth, come to rest in the waters of the Jordan, the water coming from upstream, will be cut off and will stand in a single heap. When the people set out from their encampment to cross the Jordan, the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant were at the head of the people. Now the Jordan keeps flowing over its entire bed throughout the harvest season. But as soon as the bearers of the Ark reached the Jordan, and the feet of the priests bearing the Ark dipped into the water as its edge, the waters coming down from the upstream piled up in a single heap, a great way off, at Adam, the town next to Zarethan, and those flowing away downstream to the Sea of Arabah, the Dead Sea, ran out completely. So the people crossed near Jericho. The priests who bore the Ark of the Covenant stood on dry land exactly in the middle of the Jordan, while all Israel crossed over on dry land until the entire nation had finished crossing the Jordan. Gee, it
Does that
sounds
sound a
like
little familiar?
similar to something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Quite the production.
Right. So we're not the first to say, whoa, wait a minute, there's a the description sounds very similar, that
Yeah.
they're the waters are going to stop here, and the children of Israel can go through on dry land, and then the Ark of the Covenant will be carried, and and da 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 da. So um, it's as every good speaker knows, the more you can give people what we call memory triggers, and
Oh.
and connections, the easier the easier it is for them to remember the news story.
Right.
The similarity to something before it not only from an educational point of view, but from a validation point of view. Oh, if God did it once, God's doing it again. We heard that story of what God did for for my grandfather and grandmother when they came out of Egypt. God's doing it for us now too. It
Except the difference,
validates who we are.
except the difference is they were being pursued in the first story. In this case, they are, invading, so to speak. So it's a different reason that they're having to cross.
It is a
Because they're being
different
chased
reason,
by
but
the
I'm
Egyptians.
not sure that invasion was the way that they
No, sorry, wrong
perceived it.
word.
Yeah.
Taking possession of, but they were a threat to the
To
people
the
in Jordan.
locals.
Yeah. But they're not being pursued.
No.
They,
No, the water, it's not that they're being saved from drowning in the waters.
right.
It's that this is a sign of God still being with them.
Right.
And like I said, it's a memory trigger. It's a sign that they can relate to.
Yeah.
That a similar experience, occurred to our ancestors, and now this is something that we can refer to.
Well, the
Right?
priests are leading them too. When they crossed in Egypt,
Yep.
that was a
Yeah,
whole different.
and they can only, just as we had with the pillar of fire and whatever in the wilderness, they can only proceed when the ark is
Right.
moving forward.
Right.
All right,
Interesting.
let's see if we can do chapter. Let's get through chapter 4 also. Just reading it through. Get through chapter 4, and then we can stop at that point, because chapter 5 gets into a little bit of a different thing too.
I have to leave soon. I have to go and unlock the temple.
You have to go and unlock the temple. Okay.
I have
All
to
right.
go. No, not yet, but soon,
Yeah,
because
okay, all
the
right,
sisterhood, we're doing our setup today. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So someone want to
I
read
have
chapter
to
4?
leave, Rabbi, because I have a doctor's appointment. I have a doctor's appointment, so I have.
Okay. Well, do we need to stop now? We'll stop now.
Yeah, I've got time.
I
I'm
say-
We
good.
got a couple more minutes?
Oh, yeah. No, I can,
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
to
Mary Ann,
go.
we haven't even heard your voice.
Okay.
You've stayed, you've been,
I'm staying.
there you are. Okay. All right. Let's try to do chapter 4. Okay.
Let's just say I have a different version, but it's almost word for word the same.
Okay.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I can read. It came to pass when, this is chapter 4, when all the nation were passed over the Jordan, that I can get my fingers to work here. That the Lord spoke unto Joshua, saying, take 12 men out of the people, out of every tribe 1 man, command them, saying, take you hence out of the midst of the Jordan, out of the place where the priest's feet stood, 12 stones, make ready 12 stones, and carry them over with you, and lay them down in the lodging place where you will where you will camp that night. And Joshua called the 12 men whom he had prepared of the children of Israel, one of every tribe. Joshua said unto them, pass on before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan. Take every man of you a stone upon his shoulder. So this isn't a stone that you're holding in your hand. This is a rock, on your shoulder. A stone upon your shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel. Let this be a sign among you that when your children ask in time to come, saying, what mean you by these stones? Does that sound familiar? That frame of reference? And when your children shall ask you on this day, why are we eating matzah? Why are we doing this? All right. Okay. What does it mean? Then you shall say unto them, because the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones shall be a memorial unto the children of Israel forever, ad olam. The children of Israel did as Joshua commanded. They took up 12 stones out of the midst of the Jordan, as the Lord spoke unto Joshua, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel. They carried them over with them unto the place where they were going to camp, and laid them down there. Joshua also set up 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests that bore the ark of the covenant stood, and they are there until this very day. I'm not sure if they are still there at this very day, but they were there till that day. And the priests that bore the ark stood in the midst of the Jordan until everything was finished that the Lord commanded Joshua to speak unto the people, according to all that Moses had commanded Joshua. The people hastened and passed over. When it came to pass, when all the people were through, that the ark of the Lord passed on, and the priests before the people. The children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh passed on armed. They crossed armed before the children of Israel, as Moses spoke unto them. About 40,000 men ready armed for war in the presence of the Lord unto battle in the plains of Jericho. On that day, the Lord magnified Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they feared him, or they respected him, as they feared Moses all the days of his life. The Lord spoke unto Joshua, saying, command the priests that bear the ark of the testimony that they come out of the Jordan. Joshua therefore commanded the priests, saying, come up out of the Jordan. It came to pass, as the priests that bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord came up out of the midst of the Jordan, as soon as the soles of the priests' feet were drawn up into the dry ground, the waters of the Jordan returned unto their place and went over its banks as before. And the people came up out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month and encamped in Gilgal on the east border of Jericho. And those 12 stones which they took out of the Jordan, Joshua set up in Gilgal. And he spoke unto the children of Israel, saying, when your children shall ask their fathers in time to come, saying, what's the meaning of these stones? You shall let your children know, saying, Israel came over this Jordan on dry land, right here. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan from before you until you passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up from before us, until we passed over, that all the peoples of the earth may know the hand of the Lord, that it is mighty, that you may fear the Lord your God forever. Climax of the first part. So if Cecil B. DeMille was doing this story, we would be at the first intermission, right? we've now crossed over, and we brought these symbols to set up the stones, to set up a little monument kind of thing, to a marker, so that everyone will know that that place is still, to this day, is called Gilgal. Gilgal is means like circular, round for the stones or whatever. Okay.
Sounds good.
All
Very
right.
theatrical.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if anybody ever did a movie about it, but
Good.
you certainly could.
It's a good plot.
And right. And my guess is that this area, again, where we did our where we did our Bob Hope type tours and whatever, all those Nachal settlements, which became actually kibbutzim or moshavim in what's called the Jordan River Basin. They would probably be more more populated if it wasn't still. Part of it is right along the West Bank, part of it is in the West Bank, part of it is still, there are people who think it should be negotiated, there are people who think it should be totally settled and annexed, and so that's but it can be a very fertile area right along the
Oh, it's
Jordan.
beautiful, beautiful area.
Yeah. But a lot of the places, the place names that we're going to see in Gilgal, Jericho, whatever, those are still places, and
Yeah.
those are the names to this day.
Yep.
Okay. Next week we'll continue with an interesting ceremony. That's as a chapter 5. So I had hoped to get to chapter 9 today. Guess what? We won't. But we'll pick up with 5 next week, and we'll see how far we get. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Rabbi,
Be well.
Take
I will
care.
order the right book right now.